No, I just like I know like I know that you were an interesting cat, so it's like I'd love to do this
Not what
again.
you expected, right?
No, I just like well, no, I expect something along the lines of what you were, but you exceeded that,
Yeah.
and I know you've got more stories, so that's
Yeah.
why
So,
I'd love to bring you back. So here we are.
yeah.
So we didn't really talk much about your father. We were talking about it just now.
Yes.
I'd love just give me a brief overview of who your dad was. We don't need to name any names or anything like that. Just who your father was as a man.
As a person,
Yeah,
the little synopsis how his life evolved and whatever. His father was killed
your
when he
father was Joe Colombo, head of the Colombo crime family.
That's what you say. I say he was that of the Colombo family.
Okay, got it.
All right.
Yeah, I've watched.
I mean, this whole crime thing is.
Read
I
too
don't
many
know.
articles.
I'm a bookmaker. It was illegal then. It's legal today. You know, he was involved in policy. It was illegal then. It's legal today. So what is vice today is commerce tomorrow.
I stand corrected.
Yeah. So what is crime? If that's the case, the United States government is by far the biggest crime family that ever existed, with no ethics or morals.
Quite well made.
Whatsoever. They don't care who they destroy. And it's actually pretty sad when you think about it, because the tactics they used and the things they did was, gambling is a harmless vice. There's no victims there. And the nonsense that people hit gamblers is not true. It would be like me coming in for an interview and you wanted me back and then stabbing me in the heart when I leave. I mean, how good is that for your business? I mean, it just doesn't make sense.
Right.
You kill off your customers or kill your viewers, Figure out something to put in there or destroy them if they give you a bad review. So,
but you speak about your dad very highly.
Not because he was my dad. There's certain standards that he instilled in us from birth, and the way he did, like I did with my son, and he had those standards. And that's why I say the ethics and morals of people at that time, especially him, coming out of a depression, coming out of World War II, they went through things that people don't go through, And his family ethics and his country ethics, everybody thought he was anti-government. No, he was pro-government and wanted the government to serve the people. And he had a way of speaking to you, and when he spoke to you, it was actually amazing. Excuse me. I drank Starbucks coffee. It was a rough one. I was up all night. We had a long trip in here. I have 2 more interviews after this. This one's a pleasure because first, before I continue, I'd like to thank everybody. I don't watch the videos, but I do watch the comments. They were very, very kind. And secondly, you made a very good choice by following Mark. I mean, you see his work, but you don't know how good his energy is and how much he enjoys it, and what a pleasure he is to be interviewed by. And he has a way also of bringing out the best in people. People have their own innate natural talents, and my father had that. He was a natural leader. He had a sense of humor, and he had a way of protecting the weak, and he didn't like abuse of power. That was his number one thing. But he was evolutionary, not revolutionary in his tactics. Unless, he was in danger, he endangered his family. That's who he was. It's who I am. It's what every person should be. When you say tough, a tough guy, I mean, guys, I don't run around talking tough to people. I talk empathetically, compassionately, and understanding to them. And the only time you should be tough is when it's time to be tough. Somebody's looking to harm you or harm your kids. So, he was very against TV and journalism and even radio and talk shows portraying Italians in that manner. And people started acting like the movies and the journalists because they thought that's the way they should act. People, to some degree, emulate what they see in the media. And it was very destructive. We got into the word mafia does not exist. They don't call themselves that. And it's just an ethnic slur to paint the brush. Now, what is organized crime? It's a conspiracy theory because there's only 2 countries in the world that have the conspiracy law. The United States and Great Britain. But Great Britain only has it with a plot against the royal family. So 3 Italians on a corner is a conspiracy. We did very kind deeds, and he played the hand he was dealt the way it should be played. If it was played to be dealt as a man, he dealt it as a man. If it was played to be a gentleman, he dealt it as a gentleman. I never forget when I was in 2nd grade, I always heard that you should always be a gentleman. Now, did I know what a gentleman was in 2nd grade? No, I did not. So, teacher asked the class, what would you like to be? Some people said firemen, some people said police officers, some people said lawyers, some people said doctors, some people said veterinarians. I said I wanted to be a gentleman, and the teacher took notice to that. But if I could explain to you what a gentleman was verbally, I couldn't, but I witnessed it growing up. And what a gentleman is a man that handles his situations in a proper way. And there's also a thing called unsung gentlemen. And that's a guy that does it quietly and whatever, and not looking for glory. And he was an unsung gentleman when he needed to be. And then he was very visible and vocal when he had to be. So, but I would call him an unsung gentleman. He was always there working on making you better. You had to be better. To your capabilities. He used to say, and he was very advanced, if the most you have to give is 30% and you did 30%, put your head on a pillow. You did the best you can. Should be treated like you gave 100% because it's all you had to give. So I grew up with those type of things. And you got to remember, I didn't go fight at World War II. I wasn't on a suicide mission. I wasn't stationed at Casablanca. I didn't grow up during the Depression. I didn't come home to a starving situation where you couldn't earn a living. And if you hustle earning numbers or taking a bet, I don't think it's the worst thing in America. They're doing it now, and they're going to destroy this country. That's why I'm doing the podcast, Taking Action with Chris Colombo, because I see in one of the stories I'm going to tell you are the pitfalls of it. And I ran it like a corporation. If you made $500 a week, you follow me? There was no way I was letting you lose $5,000. You follow me? If you made $1,000 a week, the most you could bet on a week was $1,000. If you lost it, not a game, only $100 a game to give you the action. If you lost it, I would shut you down till you paid it. If you had to pay it $100 a week for 10 weeks or $100 a month for 10 months, I didn't care. Or however you had to pay it. And what I used to say, if you miss one vacation with your kids, not a pair of shoes, miss a meal, or can't pay the rent, we'll work it out. Even if it takes 10 years. It doesn't matter to me. At no interest. So that's why I had the customer base I did. That's why I had the reactions I did. Are there people out there that lets a person work in ShopRite or Walmart lose $50,000 that earn $300 a week? Yeah. Are they ever going to get paid? No. So it's the illusion then, not the reality of it. Now, with legalized gambling, it's going to change a lot of things. Because like I have said, there is that addictive gene. And because it's illegal, you don't saturate that market or see it. Now you're going to see it. So they have these kids betting parlays. And they say somebody bet 46 cents on a parlay and won $465,000. That may have happened. But right now, sitting here, I'd have a better shot, and we're in New York City at the W Hotel, of a shark swimming into the brackish water, up the East River, jumping into the sewer and coming out of the bowl and biting me. But what they're trying to do is if you have $1,000 to bet, they'll take it. If you got 46 cents to bet, you take it. That's a dangerous thing. And they're selling a dream. So I'm trying to show them how to survive, how to bet. I am an expert at it. And how to analyze, how to think with their mind, and how to do it as a science, rather than an addiction or a compulsive marketing tactic. And what compelled me to do that was I watched my son and his friends with legalized gambling, and they were trying to explain it to me. And I said, you guys are going to lose your allowance and be broke by the end of the day. You need 2 more jobs. They're sucking you in. So that was the reason it started. Not only that, I really believe that the ethics, everywhere I go with my son, you met him, Mark, people hail him. And, he's charismatic, he's with the times. And I ask him things. We learn from one another. I learned that from my father.
Nice young man.
What?
A nice young man.
A young gentleman.
Young gentleman.
Yes.
There you go.
And let me tell you something. I thought he was going to be an axe murderer as a kid. I was scared. We had to watch him in shifts. The energy of this kid, you have no idea the things he did. It wasn't bad, but it was creatively a menace. And he got that out of his system, and he's gone on to be, my daughter and my son, if I wrote down everything I expected from them before they came, I would have gotten more, and I did. And I'd like to say that I saved them, and I gave up what I was doing and made them better people. Actually, it's reverse. I'd probably be in jail or dead right now, as we speak. So I owe them a lot. And that was one of my father's values. Getting back to legalized gambling. I'm trying to educate people. I usually don't bet because there's no science in the first 3 weeks of football. My intuition is still there. I was 4 out of 4 the first week. Second week, I think I was 1-1. This week, 5 out of 7. That's not bad. Those are some pretty good numbers. And if I would have narrowed it down, it would have been one pick that would have hit each week. And that's the way to do it. So
What's the name of your podcast again?
Taking Action with Chris Colombo. It's not just that, it's stories.
It's on YouTube.
YouTube, yes, on YouTube. Yeah. It's not just that, and you're up with me, and so was this other thing to sit down. That was an interesting interview. He was coming at me guns blazing. He thought he knew everything, and that's one thing I learned from my father. Hold your cool and give him the facts. One of the things he used to say, if you're making sense, you don't have to scream and yell. People will hear it, And the more they come at you screaming and yelling, the more the sense you make and hold your composure. It's an exchange because a lot of people are out of frustration. And you never know what happened to a person the day before. Now, me, whenever I was in a fight, I always let the person hit me first. You can say whatever you want, but I always took the first shot because I'm a very powerful fighter. If I get close to you, it's over. I don't care who it is. And I never want to unleash that unless I know I'm in danger. I don't provoke it. But I had a break, so I'll tell you the story, and this is one of the things I was taught. And this is one of the things you never know what happens to people 10 minutes before. And this is what younger kids are going to watch out for and everybody, because people that have a very bad day or something happened to them in their life. I was driving, and I guess I pulled out a little too soon, coming out of like a strip mall onto a 3-lane main thoroughfare. It was on Route 9 in Wapacha Falls. Like maybe a half a second too soon. And this guy is on me, beeping his horn, flashing his lights. I see him carrying on. So we get to a light. He's trying to come around. And I'm not paying any attention. Usually at that time, I'm like this. I'm sorry. What am I going to do in the mirror? Apologize. And he kept coming. Now it came to the point it was dangerous. But he's almost trying to run me off the road. So now I says, I reached my snapping point, And we all have that breaking point. So I get out of the car. I slam the door. I'm ready to open the car. And I'm ready to just start. And I look there. There's his wife. And I look at the back seat. There's 2 beautiful little girls. And he's screaming at me. I says, pal, listen, pull over. I says, wife, take the keys away from him. I says, pal, I can't fight with you in front of your kids. If you want to hit me, go ahead. I'm getting back in the car. I wouldn't do that in front of your wife or kids. I was angry at that point, but that's the kind of self-control and the morals that were instilled in me. Had that not been, what about those 2 kids watching me pummel their father? Or let's say by accident I slip or he pushes me in a car, hits me. Those kids have got to see that for the rest of their lives and his wife. Or vice versa. So those morals stopped me at that point. So the guy says to me, wait, you seem like a nice man. There's a little picnic bench here. He says, can I talk to you a minute? He says, yeah. And his wife says, would you please talk to him? And I'm going, oh my God, this is so nuts. And this guy was looking to run me off the road. Now he wants to talk to me. So I sit down and he starts crying. Said, I just lost my father to cancer. I never told him I loved him. And when I lost him, I have all this guilt and I have all this anger pelted up. So I talked to him. I said, let it turn to something else. He still hears you. It's because he's not here that the matter is, he was your father. He loved you. He understands. Don't worry about it. He says, can I have your number? I'd like to talk to you from time to time. I give him my number. The guy still calls me.
That's great.
Yeah. But the point of the matter is, if you behave like a gentleman, you could diffuse the situation. So those were the kind of things that my father did. Now, was he the man that everybody says he was? He was one of probably the toughest men I ever met, but you'd never know it unless you challenged him, but not for money. He had a rule, you don't hurt people for money. He said it was dirty paper. And one of the things he told me, and he said, and I was very adamant about it, you can forgive a debt, a black eye will heal, an insult will go away. He says, but if you take somebody's life, you can't give that back. So even if they do something deserving of it, they may have a mother they take care of, a child, an elderly person, or even a cat. So their misery is gone. Think of that person before you act. And he said to me, he says, put a dish in the stove on broil and he put one in the freezer. And he says, take the one out of the stove. I said, I'll burn my hand. He says, take the one out of the freezer. I took it out. He says, you can do that at any time. He says, make sure you don't do things hot-headed. And I have a temper because of the Lyme disease also, or whatever. I scream and yell. I don't do anything physically, but in an act of anger, people are capable of things. And if you act like a gentleman both ways and you have the ethics, these things to escalate, and you see it every day in life, and you see it on the news, people are just going crazy. They're frustrated. And not only that, poverty or the need for money causes people to get violent. So in that era, if they did numbers or whatever, they employed jobs, went back into the community. On taking action, the last person that I interviewed was making $40 million a year, his end with 200 number stores policy. That's a lot of money for 200 locations. That's take three. They used to do it with the pick three handle, the pari-mutuel. They would add up three different tracks, and the total of money was three numbers. And then there was the Brooklyn number of just that track, the pari-mutuel. So now they do it with the ball drop. So they would give their runners 25%. They would employ people in the store that got significant, about 25%, and they would pay $600 to one. So if you hit a number straight for $1, you got $600, like if you played 355. New York State is $500, and they have over 200,000 spots. So you can imagine the scenario of money, and they give 6% to the merchant in the store when you go and you see that machine. And they have to pay for the machine, and they have to pay for the electric that does that machine. So they're actually at a losing thing, but they didn't have it because people want it. But New York State is making all the money. So the person that's cutting your cold cuts or putting your money for gas, it's the person that's got to stop, do the machine. They have to pay for the machine, the terminal, and that thing, and work on is 6%. What you called organized crime of whatever ethnic group was numbers, it was a homegrown Harlem thing. You know, black people started it. And that money stayed in the community. The runners made money. They used to give away food and shelter in the number stores also. And they took care of the community. So when Take Six, Lotto, Mega Millions, Powerball, all that came out, it was supposed to end the number. That money was supposed to be used for children's education and to lower our tax bills that keep going higher, school tax, which are getting outrageous in suburbs and the city. I have yet to see the tax bill go on or anything going to education. So I don't understand who's monitoring that and why that money's not going to the right places. And if you do the comparison, I had an expert come on, that's what his name was, Bob Hopkins. He was making $40 million a year with 200 stores. That was net. And, I guess he had partners or whatever he did. But he was considered the biggest in the 5 boroughs. You're talking about 200,000 spots and not paying out much at all. So I don't know if there's that much education in the world. So those are one of the points that once the government steps in, administrative costs, there's got to be a skim in there somewhere, And the other thing is they shut a number down. If you go to play a number and there's too much on it, they know how much they're going to make. You got no shot to beat them. And not that you want to beat them, you want to earn a living. So that was one of the points I brought out, and that's one of the points I want to bring out with legalized gambling. There's an estimated 45 million people are going to bet on professional football this year and wager approximately $12 billion. Now, I don't know what they're pledging for legalized gambling. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. So if it does some good for the community, and what's happening is all this money is not going back into the community. Those who had jobs, people that hit numbers, people that made money numbers, they bought cars, they bought clothes, they went to shoe stores, they bought groceries. It went back in. Anybody knows anything about economics, it trickles back in with disposable income.
It doesn't seem like education has improved since the lottery took off.
No, it's gotten worse. It's gotten worse. Now, I don't know the numbers when they said it was
legal. But they're giving $45 million to some...
What?
But they're giving $45 million to some guy that was a janitor.
Yeah. Yes. Well, that's a scary thing. So, was it that the government wanted to control it? So they painted this picture? Because how could it be that bad yesterday and this good today? Like the Catholic Church. Catholic Church says that if you ate meat on Fridays, you went to hell. Now you can eat meat on Fridays. They let all those people out of hell? I mean, it's ridiculous. And why shouldn't priests get married? They did it until the 17th century. I think it's cruel and inhuman. And I don't like it at all. And how could you trust your children? And I had Catholic grammar school, Catholic high school, and Catholic college. How could you trust? And I didn't know and understand my parents till I became a father, or understand my kids till I became a parent, or what my parents went through. So I don't know how you could basically chastise people from having children. I think it's inhuman. And you're allowed to get married, I think, to the 15th to 17th century. First priest that died and left his money to his wife, they said that was it. So it's a money thing. You know.
It's always a money thing. Isn't it?
Always a money thing. Always a money thing. And I think that's what people are losing sight of now today, you know. And, you know, we go to the doctor and take an awful lot of pharmaceuticals today. I don't do that, you know. I mean, there's, what do you call it, cholesterol pill. Any doctor and any pharmacist takes red rice yeast. That's the way it's Europe. We're the only country with a cholesterol pill. You take red rice yeast, it goes away. But that leads to another pill, leads to another pill, leads to another pill. And I don't know if they want to make you live sick, but they want to make you live on a pill. I mean, not too long ago, we had the Rockefeller laws that you can go to get life from marijuana, and not even a large amount. Now, it's the most medicinal thing in the world. What's vice yesterday is commerce today again.
Yeah, pot is a cigarette now.
Excuse me?
Pot's like a healthy cigarette now.
Oh, it's the best thing for you. I mean, it cures everything. As they say it does. Like they did with the vapes. I mean, if you didn't want kids to take them, why would you produce a bubblegum flavored one? And your body is supposed to, your lungs to purify carbon dioxide, but with water, it synthesizes it, so it's even more damaging. So it's supposed to cleanse air, your lungs. I mean, it does make it more filthy with pollution and cigarettes, but with the vape, it's even worse. So they told everybody cigarettes are bad, so now I got kids running around vaping everywhere, you know? And they always seem to be the target. So moving forward, what was special about Joe Colombo is he recognized that. He knew what was fair and knew what was unfair. He didn't like drugs, he didn't like prostitution. He didn't believe in them because he said you're living off the blood of people's children. If an adult chooses to do drugs, it's his business or her business. And a woman does what she wants with her body. If a man is making money off that, he's hurting people's children. So those are the morals that I liked about him, if you want to know the truth. Now, you want me to crucify him for being a man or earning a living during World War II or feeding his family? You're not going to hear it from me. And, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with bookmaking. If there is, why is it so good today? That's the way I see it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's wrong.
It makes sense.
It makes sense. Common sense was important to him. I'll give you a quick story. I want to give you two of them, and then we'll finish it up. The FBI was working very hard to put my father in jail. It was the COINTELPRO division of the FBI. It was a secret organization. The New Yorker leaked it. That's why if you go to the article on me and hit COINTEL, they put people next to Martin Luther King, Maya Kahani, my father, and other people. They didn't like you. They caused violent disruptions within your organization to make you look bad or kill you. And they were trying to talk Martin Luther King into killing himself. They targeted my father because he always tried to unite the Italians, the blacks, and the Jews because we're very close in neighborhoods together. And we learned to coexist without prejudice or malice. And they targeted all three. All three died by assassination. And moving forward, what happened is the FBI was targeting. They couldn't get them for what they wanted. And my brother Joey was a coin collector. And he liked to collect coins. And at that time, a silver quarter, which there were a lot around, was worth like 36 or 40 cents. So you take them, you melt them down. You almost doubled your money. And in the late 60s, you know, that was something you could do. Because, the best suit you could wear was $40. The best shoes you could wear at $10. A slice of pizza was 15 cents. You know, if you could take a quarter, make another quarter, have, 100 of them a day, you did good. You made the significant money. Not money like we see today, but the economy was on the gold standard and things were reasonable. It wasn't inflationary times. So they changed the law to arrest my brother Joey. And my father was so outraged, he grabbed my mother, my sister, and me, and he was kicking on FBI headquarters at 69th Street, says, take us all, put us all in jail. These are Gestapo tactics. Why'd you do this to my son? He was a young man, and it was called Hobbs Act, interfering with interstate commerce. He was facing 20 years as a young man for just melting down these coins that was legal yesterday. And they actually changed the law to arrest him. And then more people came, and more people came. And every night, between 300 and 2,000 people would be marching in front of FBI headquarters. And one of their chants was, Heidi, 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 ho, the FBI has got to go. Hitler vowed he'd never die. He came back as the FBI. And at the end, they would go, Zig Heil, at 11 o'clock. Everybody go home. Next night, they meet there. And the press would never pick it up, the government, to show what was going along. And there were a lot of tactics, breaking down doors, people that were involved in numbers while they were laying out their dead. They come and arrest them, guns drawn, telling the mother when the father was in the coffin, never see their son again, harassing pregnant women, anything to get you to be violent against your family so they could say they got you. So he believed in peaceful protesting. So in the course of things, I think this went on for about 3 months, and it was gaining no traction because news stations wouldn't pick it up, the media wouldn't write it, and the government used and exercised their rights to do that. Illegal rights to suppress it. So at a turn of events, there was a gentleman, a very, very strong gentleman. And how this come to be, I get a call from a writer and a talk show host telling me about the Johnny Carson story. He got some of the facts correctly, but it was distorted. He said he was trying to make it in very differently. And he said my father tried to shake him down for education, for his grandson. My father didn't have a grandson at the time, or a granddaughter. It was me. Because I was the only family member born upstate to add me down as a grandchild. And what it was, he wanted the news, and this is what happened. Johnny Carson was at Patsy's on the west side, not Patsy's in Harlem. And Johnny liked to drink. And Johnny liked to womanize. And Johnny was Johnny. I'm a fan of Johnny's. I mean, drinking, I've done some silly things myself in my youth. I understand it. And, he was, he had quite a wit about him. He was a very attractive woman, and her boyfriend was a very significant guy. He was hailed as a leader of a crime family, or whatever you want to say. He had that reputation. Probably one of the only people that scared me. There's a story there as a kid. This is a good one. So one of the reasons I don't curse. So what happens is Johnny's trying to pick her up, and he's, making comments about her breasts and things like that. She moves. He keeps bothering her. And, they get a call, the boyfriend's on the way, and the two guys with him finally take Johnny and throw him down the stairs. Get the hell out of here. I said, this guy, he gets here, he does not tolerate that kind of stuff. The guy gets there, he hears what happens. He goes to NBC. He's banging on the doors, and he wants to get in. He tells him, Johnny comes back, tell him I'm going to kill him. He shouldn't treat women that way. And people of that era, not just their women, all women, they were very particular and of that lifestyle. It was sacred to them that you didn't act like that. And act like that with their women was really insane. I mean, you weren't getting away with it. They had the life, didn't care. So Johnny's pretty upset about the whole situation, So he goes on the lam, and people don't know what that means. That's in hiding. So he's in a motel in New Jersey. And my father was close with a producer at NBC by the name of Cy Kravitz. Cy Kravitz, if you saw the movie, the TV show The Jeffersons, it was a popular show at that time. There was a black woman named Roxy Roker, and she played the beautiful black woman married to the white guy upstairs, and Jefferson was like the opposite of, he was a black bigot, and Archie Bunker was a white bigot, and he came from that show. It was very entertaining and very typical of the time. And it was reverse satire humor, and it was actually pretty good. So Cy Kravitz married her and had Lenny Kravitz, and his half-brother and half-sister is still friends of mine upstate. So Ed McMahon goes to Cy Kravitz, and Cy says, yeah, I know Joe Colombo. He straightens everything out. He's wonderful to talk to. And here's Ed McMahon. He comes to the house, and he tells my father the story. My father says, okay, I'll take care of it. He says, so my father thinks, and he says, but here's what we're going to do. He says, if I take care of this, because NBC wants the Carson story back. You follow me? And there's a show back, and Ed McMahon, that's why he started when Carson was out handling the show without him. Because now he's gone for quite some time, and the show is suffering, and probably the best talk show ever. I mean, I enjoyed it. And Ed McMahon and my father became very close. That's how he emceed the two biggest extravaganzas of music put together: Frankie Valli, Frank Sinatra, Trini Lopez, Paul Anka, Sammy Davis, you name it, in the Phil Forum for the Italian American Civil Rights League. And the inception of that was this picketing. So, but there was gaining no ground. So my father says, I'll make the deal if NBC promises to cover the picketing. He says, and I'll take care of it. They says, no problem. I think it was Chris Borgen, nice guy. And they started doing it. That's what happened. And he goes and he speaks to this gentleman, and he's being out, you know, he says, what are we going to do? I don't want to do this. This guy insulted my girl. He says, listen, he says, you never had a little too much to drink? He said, he didn't really actually touch you, did he? He says, so not only that, you show people you're an animal if you do this. Right now, you're helping the Italian people gain ground, and you act that way, you become typical of what people are thinking. There should be some forgiveness. McMahon and my father became good friends, but one of the conditions is that sooner than later, Johnny Carson's got a movie show to California. He can't come to New York anymore. So those were the terms. And everything except the players were correct. My father was correct. The Johnny Carson story was correct. They had the restaurant wrong, and they had the gentleman that they said did it wrong. And he was trying to put his spin on it. And he came from Carson's attorney to this guy, and it was a book about Carson. So even when it was the upfronts, Carson fly in and then fly out. And my father was assassinated in 1971, so Carson wanted to get out of town soon too, anyway, because he didn't have him there. And Carson and my father met a few times, but Ed McMahon and my father became very, very close. He was a regular at the house. And what a nice gentleman he was. So the second part is he had me in the school called, first I was in Little Flower Montessori in Prospect Park with Maria Montessori as one of the nuns that trained the Indians with the flowing robes and the bead in their head. And they were very advanced. You had to work very hard. It was meant, and people say I'm entertaining because I learned that there. And the Montessori school was to enjoy the work you do and make it entertaining and fun, even though it may be tedious and may be hard, but make it pleasurable. And that's what I try to do, and everything I do. And that's one of my successes as a father, I think, and they'll tell you I'm very entertaining with them. And so was my father. He made things fun. Stops being fun, stop doing it. So I was in this school. It was called the Berkeley Institute. It was an all-WASP school. So I found out a philosophy: if you got an A in conduct, A in grades, F in conduct, you're in trouble. If you got an F in grades and an A in conduct, you did the best you could. You just didn't have the tools. C's and C's, you had to work harder. So it was a pretty good philosophy. So I was getting very bad grades, and I wanted to get thrown out of the school. Very bad conduct, because every time I had a good grade, I had a fight. Every time I had good sports, I was one of only 2 Italians in the whole school, and it was significantly a WASP school, White Anglo-Saxon Protestant. So I was diagnosed with dyslexia. Now, I figured maybe if I could do something, I knew what dyslexia was, and you could get out of that school if you did it. So they used to give me these booklets. They were about this big. Some were pink, some were blue, some were yellow. So I started from the back, and I wrote backwards all the way through. Right? So it looked like I had dyslexia, but I had the worst case of dyslexia you ever seen. So they invite my father to the school. They tell him, there's something wrong with your son. He's dyslexic. We're not here. They just want to throw me out because I was Italian and his name was Colombo and he was hailed as what he was. And that's one of the things he had asked the news to cover with schools, that unfairness. So my father gets an expert and he takes me for diagnosis. Do I have dyslexia? The guy looks, if he's got dyslexia, he's the smartest dyslexic I ever met. He says, nobody can do this. He says, you want it out of school? He says, you have no idea. He says, so he tells the principal and he gets me out of there and I go to St. Angel's Hall and I never look back. But I knew he wanted me there and he knew education was important to him. And it's one of the things he worked hard on with the Italian American Civil Rights League. Also built a camp in Rosendale, New York for 2,000 underprivileged kids. Put a handicapped pool in for children in 1970. That was unheard of. And not by grants or by law. And those are the things I liked about him. The other stuff you want to read about him, most of it's untrue, but I would have to say all around he's probably one of the toughest men that ever lived. But that wasn't his way. He used his mind, not his brawn. And that was one of the stories to tell. And, him and Carson became friendly, but him and Ed McMahon became best of friends.
That's why the Carson show moved to L.A.
Yes.
Interesting.
He can't come to New York acting like that. He said, I'm going to California with the rest of the weirdos. They say he moved, and there was a comment that they moved because he wanted to get better guests. I mean, it was the Carson show. It's like you were saying you moved to Alaska to get better guests. It's not the case. And actually, at that time, New York was preeminent. People liked to come into New York. And, there was a lot more going on than there is now. I think that's one of the ways that he used his mind, and he was advanced in politics, especially civil rights. And that was how the Italian American Civil Rights League started getting the notoriety it did. They end up my brother Joey goes to trial. It's the worst case the federal government has ever put on because after they gave their case, we gave no defense. It was that bad. And within 45 minutes, there was acquittal across the board. So it was recognized. And the lead witness recanted saying that it was a plot. We didn't have to give a defense.
What are your biggest regrets in your life?
I have two. We'll talk about one this time and maybe another time. How's that?
Excellent.
You asked me on the last show if I had any regrets. I said, no, I didn't have a choice. And I thought about that because you don't have a choice does not mean you don't have a regret. There was a friend of mine. His name was Cesar Molo. And how we became friends is I failed in algebra in sophomore year or freshman year going into sophomore. I don't know. It was 1977. That summer I was born October 1960. I would have been 16 to drive. So I remember somebody else in summer school used to pick me up. So I used to get picked up, and it was the school I was going to. It was called John S. Burke Catholic High, where my children go. Very good school, good people. Faith and family is their motto. And we get there, and usually algebra teachers, you really don't use algebra for anything. And it's really boring, and the teachers that teach it are really boring too, because you never use it. It's not exciting, it's not anything. So the teacher that was teaching was a guy by the name of Brother Anthony Duo. And I'm saying, I'm in the summer school. I says, I hate this algebra. And he walks in, he says, I know this sucks that you got to be here for the summer. He says, I'm a math teacher. I don't like to teach algebra. It's boring to teach. He says, I'm not going to give you homework. It's the summer. I'm not going to test you. All I ask you to do is pay attention the time you're here with me. I'll ask you questions while we're doing it, paying attention. I don't give A's. Everybody gets a B. I said, this is my kind of deal. I said, I can pay attention. I'm alert. No homework, none of this nonsense, figuring out problems. This is good. So I'm sitting next to a kid, and he was a little bit older, and he just wouldn't be quiet. And Brother Duo says, asked me a question. I couldn't pay attention because of him. I'm not going to say he's talking or being distractive. I said, I apologize. I'll pay more attention. He says, you're going to end up back here again. That's the last thing I wanted. I asked you to pay attention. He says, at least you can give me that. I'm like, I want to tell him I'm the biggest fan of this, but I don't want to be able to teach his pet or telling anybody. So I tell him, could you do me a favor and please just be quiet? I says, could you do that? You guys from the city, this, that. He says, my mother's the mayor of Warwick, and you don't understand what trouble I'm going to cause for you now. Nobody tells me to be quiet. I go, oh, God, I said, look at this. Carry on and on. He says, and when we go outside, I'm going to kick the hell out of you. He says, if you really think you can, be my guest. I warn you, you put your hands on me, there's going to be a problem. So I guess he goes, he makes a phone call. So I walk outside, and I'm not even thinking about fighting. I'm thinking about getting to the car and getting out of there as fast as possible, because this guy's something wrong with him. So he says, you wait here. My friend Cesare is on his way. So Caesar was a guy, very, very big guy, built like Babe Ruth. And his Caesar or Cesare, his last name was Molo, who's soft and Italian. His parents were Italian immigrants. And it comes back that my father and brother had a place called Catania Clothiers. The father's name had Primo Coats. They were twins. So Primo means first in Italian, Secondo means second. So his father was born first, named him Primo. The second baby came was Secondo. So first and second. So I didn't know we had history. So I see a car, there was a ramp coming off the main highway into the parking lot of the school, and it was like a Delta 88. And that time, that was like the Caddy Coupe de Ville or whatever. It had the spoke rims, and it was all cuisined up was the term of that. You want to look like, yeah, jumping jack, flash blasting. And the car pulls up, and the window comes down, and I must have got hit with about 40 pounds of pot smoke like I was in London. And there's a midget driving the car, PDD, it's on the license plate. So Caesar puts his head over, he says, you Chris? He says, yeah. He says, you don't look like you belong here. This Murdy, he says, he wants me to fight with you. He says, I'm a lover, not a fighter. He says, let's be friends. So we became the best of friends. And later on, when I started bookmaking, Caesar was from the Bronx, Williamsbridge Road, and he used to hang out there with a group of his friends, and he became a runner for me. And later on, because he started gambling so much, I put him in the office with me, because if he was sitting there, he couldn't gamble. So I figured try the other side of it. And he had a friend that was a White Plains cop. His name was James DeMaria. An awful human being. He's in jail for a very long time. I hope to see him when he gets out. So anyway, long story short, this kid was dealing cocaine to all his friends. The Faye's Tavern on Williamsbridge Road, that was his place. And I never really got along with this kid. I didn't like him. And Caesar grew up in that neighborhood, but then his mother and father got elderly and they moved upstate by me. And one of the offices we had was on Paulding Avenue in the Bronx. And Caesar lived there. Let's say I paid for it. And once in a while, we'd take action out of there. That was our office, and I'd take an action. It was a wire room when there was not much going on. Because it made no sense for him to get up and go. They always came and arrest you at that period of time. This James DeMaria was tuning him up and becoming an informant, got caught dealing heroin and cocaine in large quantities. And to help get himself off, one of the things he did was told Caesar that his wife and him were arguing, could he stay at the apartment? It was to track me. And he was tuning Caesar up with the coke pretty good. And Caesar would come, he was looking worse and worse, and he was broker and broker. And I said, he's making $7,500, $8,500 a week. What are you doing? Besides the other money you do from the sheets and stuff. So somebody tells me he has this guy living there, and the guy was living there to inform on me to get my gambling operation. But meanwhile, he was a heroin and cocaine dealer, and was also dealing arms to drug consortiums with silencers and machine guns through a partner of his. I never liked this kid. So, long story short, I tell Caesar to throw him out of the place. I have words with him. And I'll never forget, it was the night of the Final Four, March Madness, the last game. And we used to talk payphone to payphone. So, they didn't have taps and stuff. And cell phones were just becoming good. And we also had analog ones that were encrypted and scrambled to each other. Very expensive, but once they went digital, we couldn't use them. So the story goes like this. This kid was now going to be brought forward to testify. So he didn't want to do that because he played a tough guy and one of these gangsters or whatever. So he's kind of like hiding out. And I guess he gave Caesar money. He used to play numbers. He used to get credit in the bodegas to play the number, pick 3. And he hits really big. Caesar's the kind of guy to forget to do things. I think he gave Caesar the money to play the number. Caesar forgot. So I never forget, he was in the Hawaii Sea in Morris Park. And I talked to him because every Monday he would come up and we would go over the work and the figures and everything. And then we'd watch Monday Night Football together after the office closed. He would come up. So one Monday I was talking to him. I'm going to be a little late. He says, Jamie wants me to stop at 1922 Fowler and see him. I said, what does he want that for? He said, I don't know. It's a dark, dreary street. And we hang up and I call back. And he wouldn't answer. I said, oh shit, something's bad. See, I felt it, when you feel it. And whatever happened, only those two know. But that's the theory. So he shot Caesar through the eye in a cowardly fashion. He got on the passenger side, and he took whatever's money out of him, and Caesar had bought a Buick Park Avenue for his mom, and he was driving it. And he kicked him out. He took his car, left him in the street, took his money, and there was only a check that was made out to me, so I went over the wire. It was me, which brought me a tremendous amount of heat. And I got everybody all night looking for him, and I knew it was bad because he never missed an appointment. So I go to the Bronx, I'm looking, we find out he got shot. I talk to a detective. I make my brother and my nephew go see his mom, which lives close to me upstate, so they break it to her. Naturally, the police come, and they're trying to blame me for it. They search the house, she allows them. They put it in her head that I did this. And we had just buried his father. And one of the reasons he was working for me, and we kept him in the Bronx, his father was in a nursing home, he was an only child, and they were considerably older than the average person that would have a child that age. And we just buried his father. I paid for the funeral. He took that very, very hard, and he was going back and forth taking care of his mother and staying in the Bronx, taking care of his father in the nursing home down there. And when the father died, he took it hard. It was the same funeral. So I went to the funeral home that was laying him out, and naturally I'd have an autopsy, so it took a little time because it was a homicide. And he was so strong, and he was so big. And he was the most lovable, childlike, sports-loving, loved to eat, loved to smoke pot, just got caught up in too much cocaine person you ever met in your life. I mean, just not a bad bone in his body, not a vicious bone. And I spent the whole night, because usually they lay you out to your right side in the wake of Catholics. So I spent the whole night massaging his face to bring the swelling down. He didn't even blink when it went in there. When you get hit, it swells that part of your face up. So I got it to the point where we could reverse the casket and lay him out so his mother could have an open casket. And I had not seen her yet because I took care of all the arrangements and I paid for the funeral, and I supported her for a very long time. And this is how much she loved me. It was heartbreaking. So when she walked up and saw him, he was an only child, she was screaming, my baby. She actually pulls him out of the coffin, tries to drag him home. I never saw anything, including the bad thing I saw in my father, that affected me so much. So I don't know if that's a regret. And I thought I was saving him by putting him on the other side of gambling. I don't know if the drugs got him or just a bad informant that is allowed to do these things. I think they get away with it. So after she did that, I sat down, I talked to him. There was a ton of people at the wake. He was beloved. He was a character, a Damon Runyon fashion, and without malice, do anything for anybody. And he was a strong, strong guy. And he talked like he had a gangster caught in his throat. He talked to you like that. He was funny. He had a good sense of humor. We used to tease him. And but never committed a crime except bookmaking with me. I made him a criminal. So his mother, the second thing that I never forgot is she says to me, you better get out of here. The police are going to arrest you, because they filled her head up with that I did it. And the thought that she thought that, the later she found out I didn't. The guy that did it at this trial mentions my name 139 times, like that justified killing him in a cowardly fashion. And actually the police that were backing him as their handlers, when he went rogue, wanted to get him. So they went to a kid and they told him, the guy says, you remember me? You sold machine guns to me. Jamie introduced you. And he says, he was an informant. So he calls his wife saying he has money from this kid, and that's how they find him. They arrest him. But the regret is that a mother lost a son. I couldn't help him. And those memories to this day haunt me terribly. I wake up at nightmares from it. And there are times I wake up crying from it. I mean, it was one of the closest people I loved in my life that was shot by a cowardly fashion. And if one thing you young kids got to learn out there is these guys that act violent and talk tough, sometimes they got a back door out like he did or thought he did, but he went a little too far because he had nothing to give them. And me as a bookmaker wasn't enough. But I lost a friend, and she lost the only thing she had in her life. I mean, I supported her forever. We used to play her birthday 327. When I used to play it and still hit it, I'd bring her half the money besides take care of it. She used to say, but nobody would know you hit this number. I said, I know. And we were always partners in it. And that's one of my biggest regrets. I couldn't save him, or I never think that I had anything to do with it, because the gambling and the drugs were two different worlds. And I was putting him in rehab that night, and this animal was staying there and tuning him up on coke constantly. And it was really bad. And if you ask me, that's one of my regrets. That's one of the things that haunt me. And that's a flame I can't put out. So part of the things I'm doing is maybe I can save that season for someone else. And what I'm trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
Gambling,
Yeah.
drugs are no good. You understand? And violence is no good. You know, somebody breaks in your house, wants to hurt you, and you kill them. I mean, they're going to kill you. I mean, that's what has to be done. So, which adds to the story about losing your temper. And what my father said, think about, she lost everything she had. And screaming, bring my baby home. And he was a big guy, you know, strong, natural athlete. You know, everything she had was taken. There was nothing I could do to replace it. So that goes back to my father's morals. And it kind of crippled a part of me forever.
All right. Chris, thank you so much for more of your stories. That was amazing.
Yeah. Was it good this time?
You're always interesting.